All right, ladies and gents, today we're doing a how to use a double drop shot for trout video. I did one years ago. I think it's time for an update, so let's see how we do. All right, so I think the first thing we should talk about is why would we use the double drop shot, and after that, when to use it. And the why is basically trout and most fish are predators, or just a smaller version of a predator as we think of it, but they will eat smaller creatures that are in the water to feed on. So like trout eat a lot of minnows, flies, bugs, lots of things that are alive and moving. And since they're predators, they also have something called a prey drive. And what that is if they see something move, it gets their attention because it's a potential meal and they need to eat to survive. That said, since I've been fishing a lot more of a drop shot, mini jigs, spoons, I've caught a lot more fish and a lot larger fish than just straight bait and weight. And out here in California, you know, we're allowed to fish with 2 rods. We have a 2-rod stamp. It doubles your chances, especially if you got one bait and weight going, and then you're going to fish jigs, drop shot, or spoons with the other. You're covering a lot more techniques and a lot more chances to get bit, especially if the fish are being a bit shy or inactive that day. Now, when to use it is usually in very dark, cloudy water, like water that isn't clear. The drop shot was designed, it's a bass fishing technique, and they typically use it in the summertime. And bass are a lot hardier in the summer than trout, obviously. And bass, these lakes, they get really, really warm, low oxygen content. The bass can survive, but they don't feel great, and they don't want to move around a lot. Just like us, you know, we're real hot and sweaty. Like, you don't want to go out and go on a jog, right? So the drop shot design is a very, very slow technique to provoke a bite. Basically, you're trying to serve the bait up for the fish so they don't have to work for it. Typically, if you're in a lake with clear water, it's typically not a place you're going to use the drop shot. Mainly because with clear water, the reason the water is clear is there's probably a lot more rock or trees, branches, that kind of thing, which helps filter the water and make it clear. Drop shot, on the other hand, those lakes usually going to be a little bit more muddy, so they're going to be a little bit more murky. So in your clear water lakes, typically you'll go to a mini jig or a spoon if you're going to fish something other than bait. Your muddy, murkier lakes and fishing areas are going to be drop shot is where it'd be a deal, or bait. Now with that out of the way, I'm going to go over rods and reels and line that typically used for double drop shot. All right, let's talk about rods and reels. The good news is, using the double drop shot, you don't have to buy new gear. You can use more than likely the rod you use for bait and weight for trout for double drop shot if you want. Just needs to be an ultralight rod. I prefer, and it doesn't have to be, I prefer 7.6 to 8 foot in length, and I prefer fast action. If you got a shorter rod that's a moderate action, great, that will work if that's all you got. If this is just more if you really want to get into it, or if you have a bunch of rods at your house and you want to pick the right rod to really give the technique a go, that's the only reason I'm telling you this. And you just need a 1,000 or 2,000 series spinning reel, and that's it, and some fishing line, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I'll show you a couple of the rods I've used. This is more on the budget end. This is about a $40 rod. This is a Daiwa Spinmatic, 8 foot, ultralight fast action, and it's about 40 bucks. Great little rod. I use these currently for bait and weight. But in a pinch, like if I forgot my drop shot rod at home or something, I could easily use this, no problem, and it would do the job just fine. I'll show you my mainstay drop shot rod now. It's a newer one. It's a new Katana K5, and it's a fast action, ultralight, obviously, but outstanding rod. It's very sensitive and it casts well. The biggest part is the sensitivity that I like. Because a lot of times when you're using a technique like this, the fish aren't going to necessarily be hammering your bait. A lot of times they're going to be barely nibbling. So it really helps me detect a lot of bites that I wouldn't normally detect, say, on the Spinmatic rod. But again, not saying that if you get a Spinmatic, you're not going to be able to catch fish. You absolutely will. I think you just catch more fish with a rod set up like this. But this is quite a bit more. This is about a $300 rod. So that's something to think of. If you get into it like I did, certainly look at equipment like this. Now, as far as your line, you can use anything from 4 to 6 pounds. You can use 2 pound if you want. I know guys that do that, but you don't need ultralight, super light line, super clear line. You have to remember this is a technique that's used in murkier water. You're not going to use it in clear water, typically. I use currently Phenix iron feather braid 4 pound, and just like on my mini jig rod, I tie on a 5 pound Runkle leader, and that's great for me. I've caught plenty of real big trout on it and haven't had an issue. Some of you like heavier line, like if you wanted to go with a 6 pound fluorocarbon, that would work too. I don't see why you would get less bites with a 6 if that's really the way you wanted to go. Or you can just spool up straight fluorocarbon to your rod. The only warning I would have is just I would say try to stay away from mono. If you already have mono on, it's no huge deal. It's just mono has a little bit more stretch in it compared to fluorocarbon. And fluorocarbon and braid are a little bit more sensitive, I'd say, than the mono. So there's a lot of times with the mono you might not be detecting bites as opposed to with the fluorocarbon and braid. So that would be my only advice. But if you got mono, like throw a drop shot rig on and let's see what we can make happen if the bite's slow. So line's not a big issue. Just choose something you like. I'd say 4 to 6, and you should be just fine. All right, guys, let's go over how to tie these rigs up. Typically, you're going to want to use mosquito hooks, and usually I prefer either 10s or 8s. 90% of the time I use size 8. I only use the 10s when I'm sizing down my bait, going with a bait, smaller bait than I normally use. Then I'll go with the 10s, but a lot of guys use 10s as their primary. I just always have had better luck with the 8s. And then we got our drop shot weights, and smallest to biggest, we got our 1/16, 1/32 or 3/32, and then 1/8. Typically, I like the 1/16 or the 3/32. The 1/8 I use usually when I know there's no debris in the water, if I'm in deeper water, like say in a boat, or if there's a lot of wind. I typically tie up rigs with all these weights on here so I can change on the fly if the weather change or the conditions change. So it's good to have a bunch of different sized weights of these type of drop shot weights. But what's unique about these drop shot weights, and get one out here, is that they have a little clip right here. And what that clip is, it's an adjustable clip. So you can stick your line in there right through the hole here, and then all you can do is pull up on it and it's locked on there pretty good, right? So if it gets stuck, I mean, even with this braid on here, and this is thicker braid than 4 pound that I got on here for demonstration purposes, but at worst comes to worst, if it got hung up, you're just going to lose your weight. It just may slide off of here. But what happens is, say you want to adjust the depth of your bottom minnow, you just pull this down off of here and you can slide it up and lock it in, and now it's locked in up here. So that's what's cool about these drop shot weights. All right, So how we tie the double drop shot. So I got these huge 1/0 circle hooks here. Just for demonstration purposes, are bigger and easier to see than these little tiny mosquito hooks. So what we want to do is I tie individual rigs and I put them in little Ziploc bags, and then I use a little swivel clip on my rod. So if I break off or mess up a rig, I can just pull that off, open up a Ziploc bag, grab another one, and throw it right on. So I'm going to show you how to tie those. But for the purposes of this demonstration, to my right is going to be your rod tip. So if you're just tying this straight onto your fishing line, the rod would be over here. So we're going to go with the end of the line here, and we want to run that line through the back of the hook. So the J part is the front, and this is the back. So we're going to run the line through the back and slide it up, and this is going to be our top hook. So we're going to put it up about where we want it, and I like to have a little bit of room up here for this rig, because I'm going to end up tying a leader loop up here. So that's about as much room as I have. It's probably about 15-20 inches. So what you do is, I like to grab the back of the hook and the line going towards the rod, grab the tag end, run this through the front of the hook, and now we got a loop here. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie an overhand knot with this loop, just like that. Okay, now we take the loop and we're going to pull the back of the hook through the loophole. If I can get a hold of it. Okay, so we got the loop through. Now we're going to pull the knot tight, just like that. And what this is it's called a Palomar knot. So what happens is, if we did it right, the hook should stand up pretty straight like that. See? Now, if your hook, when you tie this and it's kind of to the side or whatever, and it's not standing straight up, all you got to do is manipulate the knot a little bit. Just kind of work with it with your fingers and keep pulling, and you'll get it pretty straight. Just as long as it's not completely upside down. If it's kind of cockeyed, a little cattywampus, it's still not bad. That's okay. You can still hook up a fish. Now, the last part is you're going to take the tag end and run this through the front of the hook one more time. And what that's going to do is reinforce it so it really stands up straight. See, like that. Just like that. Okay? Now let's do the second hook. And it's the same process. So the front of the hook's here, back of the hook's here. We're going to insert the line, slide it down. Now, the difference between your top hook and your bottom hook, it doesn't have to be a specific amount of inches. Sometimes I do them fairly close, like that. Sometimes I do them far away. So I get two completely different depths while I'm fishing. So that's completely up to you. There's no hard and fast rule. They have to be so many inches apart. I usually do it about 10 to 15 inches is pretty good, I think. So repeat the same process with the Palomar knot. Get this in the hole here. There we go. All right, so we do our overhand loop, or knot with the loop. And take the loop end, push the hook through, and pull it tight. And hopefully I don't stab myself. There we go. Whoa. Fix that note there. Okay, standing up pretty straight. Then we take the tag end once again and run it through the front of the hook, like on the last time. This is just going to ensure this stays upright. Okay, so we got two hooks. They look like they're standing pretty upright. Looking good. All right, now let's go to the front. And we're going to tie what's called a leader loop. And this is going to allow us to easily change these using a swivel lock or a dual lock snap. So what you want to do is loop the line over itself like that one time. Then you're going to do another loop behind the big loop and make it just a little bit smaller. And hold it. Okay, so we got 2 loops there. And then you're going to do a last loop, a real small one, in between both the loops. So you got to go in between both the loops. Like that. Hold that down. And then you want to grab the medium-sized loop and pull it from the back through the big loop. Just like that. And see how that line tag end is coming off at about a 90-degree angle? That's how you know you did it right. If it happens to tight and it's like that, the knot's probably going to slip. But it was up like that when I pulled it tight, and that knot is never going to come out. And I have yet to break one of these leader loops, at least that I can remember. Very, very strong knot. And I don't leave that much tag end on it. I'll typically trim that up a little bit. So it's about like that. Yeah, that's about good. And now let's attach our weight to the bottom. So you just slide the line in the clip and slide it up. And I typically make it pretty close to the bottom rig. Usually no more than 8 inches. Usually 6 to 8 inches is about what I like. And most of the time, I'd say near 70% of the time using this rig, the bottom bait or the bottom hook is what's going to get hit. And that's the reason being is because when water's murky, the clearest part of the water is at the very bottom. And the fish that want to feed at that time are probably going to be on the bottom where they can see the best. So that's typically why in murky water, the bottom one gets hit more. But what we do is we lock it in just like that. And you can leave it like that. I don't like to do that. I like to at least tie a couple knots on there. Just to be sure, so I'm just not losing weights all the time, because the fluorocarbon's a lot thinner than this braid. So it could slip. So rather than that, tie a couple overhand knots. Boom, done. So there you have it. Weight, first hook, second hook, up to a leader loop or up to your rod. And it's that simple. All right, now let's go over what baits I use and how you hook them up on this rig. As some of you know, I'm a pro staffer with Golden State Fishing, so I fish exclusively Golden State Fishing custom baits on the Dropshot, and these are some of the baits I use. The minnow is the main standby. This is one called Gold Smoke. And it's a great bait for trout. Obviously, as I said earlier, as some of you know, they love minnows. There's lots of minnows in the water, so this is outstanding bait for that. And how you do it is I got a number 8 mosquito hook here. I like to look at it. As you can see, the round part is kind of the belly, and I look at the flat part as the back. So I like the hook to come out the back. So what I'll do is I'll hold it like this. I push it in through the nose, and I kind of run it up the hook just so it gets around the turn, and then I push it through. So the minnow's pretty straight, and it sits just like that. Now the reason why that's important and why I hook it up here is because the fish on the drop shot, what they're going to do is they're going to attack the head. They aren't going to go after the tail typically. Is when they bite, they're going to go after the head. So that's why I want the hook up here. So let me show you how I do the micro worms and ball head worms. Here's a ball head worm, Colombian Bam Bam. I like to go right through the top. And same procedure, just kind of wrap it right around the curve of the hook and then push out the point. Just like that. So it's pretty straight. Similar to a fish, but just has different action, or a minnow. And then same procedure with these inch worms here. Right through the top, or the front I should say. Slide it up. Now it's shorter, so I don't go all the way around the curve of the hook and push it through. And I want that thing just about straight on there if I can make it that way. And just about like that. So it'll bounce down in the water and give good action. Now, you can also drop shot mice tails, Berkeley worms, all kinds of stuff. And there's something called wacky rigging, especially with the worms. And what that is when you hook it right through the center here, just like that, and leave it on there, but you get a little bit more action that way. Or another way even I just thought of to hook the minnows is, instead of going through the nose up through the back, is you can go through the nose sideways like this. And what you're doing now is you're giving the minnow up and down action and side to side action. But the trade-off is there's not a lot of meat on that hook, so the possibility of you losing baits gets a lot greater. So when I typically do this is when the bite's really slow and I'm having a hard time getting bit, I will rig them up like this and see if the extra movement gets their attention more. But that's usually the only time I rig them like that. And then lastly, I'll show you these dudes. These are new Golden State Fishing micro minnows, and they are tiny. But I had a day the other day. Here, I'll show you the difference between the regular 2-inch minnow and the micro. Look at that. Ittle bitty bait. So when they're being really finicky, I'll throw these on, and I absolutely killed it the other day using these, and it was a very, very slow bite. But same procedure, flat parts to the back, going through the front or the nose, slide it up only halfway because it's a much smaller bait, and then I push it through. And there you go. Micro minnow, ready to fish. All right, now that we've gone over all that, before we start the practical application portion, I wanted to show you what this rig is essentially going to look like to the fish and in the water, and how you can change the depths with different raising and lowering the rod tip. So I'll wrap up the top hook so it's easier to see, but got our bottom hook here and our weight. This weight is designed to sit on the floor of the lake. So it's supposed to sit in the dirt, and the idea while you're doing this is you need to be delicate enough that you want to keep this weight on the ground. You don't want it coming off and bouncing too much. You want it dragging along, and you just want to give your rod tip enough action to make your bait, whatever bait you have on here, whether it's minnow, worm, or whatever, just bounce a little bit. You just want to give it a little bit of action, but you don't necessarily want it jumping all over the place. So you want to keep this weight on the bottom, and you could even go so slow as to just slowly drag this thing in so it slowly moves and not even give this any action. But 90% of the time you're going to want to give it a little bit of action. So just light pops, and you want to envision in your head that you're keeping this weight on the ground while you're doing this. Now, raising and lowering your rod tip does quite a bit with this rig, because what will happen is as you raise it, it's going to sit up straighter, right? So you have the two hooks and completely two different columns of water. But if you lower your rod tip, this happens, and you'll get both of your baits in a similar column of water, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes the fish are down there. So lots of times when I drop shot, I start off with my rod tip down, and I keep the baits pretty low. As the day wears on, and if I'm not getting a lot of fish, I'll start trying to fish it with it more upright to see if maybe some of the fish are actually higher in the water column. They aren't right down on the bottom. So it's just something important I wanted to show you before we get into the practical application. All right, cast it out. Make sure we let it sink all the way to the bottom. Wait for that line to go limp. Alright, and then we just work it back real slow, barely moving it, and just bounce the rod tip slightly. And once in a while I'll do a pause. Just let it sit there for a second. Just light bounces. Especially with these ball head worms on here, they have a lot of action, so you don't have to hardly move the rod tip at all. You can see how fast I'm reeling. Just about like that, like really, really slow, just barely moving it. Sometimes I'll just let it sit there. Keep your line tight. And lots of times the fish will bite right when you pause it. So just keep repeating that process, and hopefully we can wake them up. All right, takeaways from this clip. Notice how the rod tip is down and how slow I'm reeling. Very, very slow and still doing pauses. And right about here, fish gets hooked up. So just remember, keep it real slow, lots of pauses. All right, in this clip, you can see I'm obviously in a boat. That changes things a little bit while you're drop shotting. As you can see, I got the rod tip down as much as it can be. But still, we're probably in about 17, 18 feet of water. So that drop shot is sitting pretty straight up, no matter how much I lower the rod tip. But I want you to pay particular attention, obviously, to the action of the rod. Real light pops, and my reel speed. My reel speed is a hair faster than normal, but this is the end of the day. And what I figured out over the course of the day is that they wanted it a little bit faster than normal. And as you can see right there, the fish is on. All right, in this clip, I wanted to show it to you because I have the rod tip up at a 45. So I'm keeping that drop shot rig almost straight up and down in the water. Going real slow, and then what I'm doing is I'm dropping my rod tip a little bit. And right there, you see the fish hit. And what was happening is it was bouncing while the line was straight, and then when I would stop and pause, I would reel down into it, but that would cause the minnow to drop down a couple inches, and on that drop, that's when the fish were hitting it. All right, well, there you have it. Hope you found it informative. I know it's a lot to digest, but highly encourage you to just give it a try and stick with it. When I first did it, I felt like an idiot. I felt like it wasn't going to work. I couldn't see how bouncing a minnow on a string like that with a weight at the bottom just didn't seem like it was going to work. And I did it for a long time without a bite until I got bit. And once I got bit, that changed everything. I fell in love with it, and it's easily my favorite technique to fish now. Just love it. So stick with it. Keep trying. Like always, if you ever have questions, hit me up on the channel or on my Instagram at Sea Spanker Outdoors, and I will do what I can to get back to you in a timely manner. If you want any of those baits I fish from Golden State Fishing Custom Baits, I'll put the website here. Just enter in code Sea Spanker at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. Likewise with the RHA spoons I use, I'll put the website here, and just enter in code RHA Hooked, and you also get 10% off. And happy to announce I have another sponsor, WaterLand Sunglasses, polarized fishing sunglasses, is sponsoring me, and they're outstanding glasses. I already purchased the Ashers and the Ketchums styles, and they're really, really comfortable, lightweight, and reasonably priced for as nice as sunglasses they are. They're way better than my Oakleys. Like, I've worn Oakleys for years, as long as I've had the channel. And even longer before that, and they're way more comfortable. Outstanding glasses. You're going to see them a lot in the channel. If you want to get a pair, I'll have the website right here. All these websites also are in the description and on the channel page with hyperlinks, so you can easily go there and check them out. But definitely give WaterLand a look, especially if you're looking for some really, really nice, affordable sunglasses for fishing. They're just great. So until next time, well, I think next trip is going to be out to Pyramid next weekend. Going to go back after the Lahotans, so hopefully that turns out good. And then the weekend after, going to be out in Del Mar with Esteban and Golden State for the Del Mar Bart Hall show. I believe it's Bart Hall, or if it's Fred Hall. I get confused what it's called now, but the big fishing show down in Del Mar. We're going to be at the Max Fishing booth. So really excited about that. And from what I understand, Esteban and I are going to be giving some fishing seminars, some how-tos. So go down there and we'll get you guys schooled up. So looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll see some of you down there. So until next time, tight lines.
you.